Mr. Grady. Here. Mr. Holmes. Here. Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Paradise.
Here.
Mr. Fernandez.
Here.
Sorry, I know we've heard anywhere from 0 increase to whatever. Property, no rate increase. From my perspective, based on what we have here, it's unachievable to go with 0. Actually, we're gonna have to work hard to figure out how we make adjustments, but it's impossible to say we're gonna have a 0 mill rate increase. With what we have ahead of us. So one of the things that I did was, and I know, Jerry used to do it. I did look at the town side, and no, I mean it's financial comparison. It's not, but I looked at what were the actuals in 2021. What are the actuals in 2022 compared to budget? And I'm saying if they're either close to 0 or very, low compared to the budgets, I'm questioning, do we need the budget in 2023? I mean, one of the things is, it's great that, we have close to $2.3 million surplus in 2022. Now, you haven't been involved, but the last risk sheet that we had, okay, it's $2.3 million. And then that surplus is kind of carried forward the last two, 3 years. So, I mean, I want to make sure that whatever tax we develop, increase we develop, so we're comfortable that we're not going to generate another $1 million, $2 million surplus, because I don't want to pass the tax increase without, having an understanding. Sure, there could be surplus, and that's great, but I want to make sure that I'm comfortable that, we kind of dig deep in the budgets and say, can we do better than what we got presented to us. So I did a sheet.
I think that thought is fine. But remember, that's how we've been paying for all of our capital. So let's go down that road, and we can't.
But I'm not saying, I'm saying there has to be that right. So, I mean, before we used to go through each individual, section or whatever in the book. I did a sheet if you want to look at it, and then you don't have to respond to everything, but it's just, a sheet that I put together. I was live, maybe can't read it so small. My wife wasn't feeling that good the last 3 days, so I had a lot of time on my hands. So, did everybody get one? I got more. I got more. So it should be. So now, all I really did was start on the top column. What was our 2021 actual expense for the year? Our 2022 amended budget. What our actuals are through the end of February. Okay. And then I'm saying, depending on what we spend, we're 8 months in, I did a projection, or I said, are we really going to spend much more than what we're going to spend? Our 2023 proposed budget, and it's really my judgment on what the adjusted number should be for 2023, and then what the decrease is to the proposed budget. Some of it is small, but I just went down and just looked at the accounts. I didn't go through everything, things that stuck out, things that we weren't spending at the level of the budget, I looked at it. And so.
One thing I would just quickly point out, one of the lines you have here is contingency.
Yeah.
Taking it from 300 to 150. That won't have a mill rate impact because we appropriate fund balance equal to contingency. So we can take that. But
No, okay. So I guess I don't know how you want to discuss this, Kevin, Roche, or maybe you just look at it and get back. Look at the bigger ones. I know, like, for example, on the blue collar wages, that every year we say we didn't hire enough people, but that's been consistent, the last couple of years. So are we gonna hire more people or not? If it's consistent every year and we have the same staff that we're working with, I mean, then,
I don't know, do we want to go down? Just
whatever you want, whatever
Do
your
you want me
thought
to,
is.
do you want? First one's Roche's professional development stuff.
I don't really care. That came with the contract. I have not used
Yeah,
it. So,
to me, I'm not being,
yeah,
I'm just saying, if you didn't spend it in the last year, you're not spending it this year, do you really need it? That's all. And if you need it, that's fine. I'm not,
One word of caution about the last couple of years,
Yeah, I
there
know.
were things we couldn't do
Yeah.
because they were
I hear
closed
you.
for coronavirus, and we would tend to do them, but some couldn't be done. From a finance standpoint, I would say that that's a big one for training. Part-time help, what we're trying to do is actually use that account to bring somebody in over the summer to digitize our old records. We have a lot of records. We have to keep some record of our capital because we have many projects that are state or federally funded, and we have to keep records for a certain period of time. So the intent was to use that. During COVID, we intentionally did not bring extra people into the office just because we were able to social distance. That's why we would use that. And the training similarly, that money is actually there to try to bring in our accounting system people on site so that we can automate several steps in our budget process as well as in our AP to move to more of an ACH and non-check basis. I would like to keep that. Training for technology, that's actually a new department. Prior to this, there's actually ironically, no training in the IT department, which is sort of a definitely of an IT department because you're just never going to be able to keep up if you're going to pay training money. So this was intended to begin to develop the department or provide an opportunity for it.
So is it strictly software buying, purchasing, or is it actually physical training?
the actual training. So, I mean, we hired someone at the PD. There's a lot of training required for even for things like accountability, about how to use certain cameras and the latest technology. They need to keep up with it. For the people to go and use. I know Brian has signed up all both of them this year, 2 workshops in May to keep up with it because those things you got to be current. So that's very true.
I mean, to be honest with you, the other thought process I have rather than going into it, every, the item is, my other thought process, can you come up with, $400,000 reduction, and tell me where you can come up with.
All right.
Or to some level, what I mean?
That might
Because
be better.
I don't want to,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have to go get into everyone,
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
it's what I had in front of me.
I think that's better because this way we can sort of talk to everyone and come up with a number and give you the dollar figure.
To me, it's not necessary for me to go through every
Yeah.
item, it's just that,
You're just
it's what I saw.
I get it.
And,
You want to do that, Kevin? Just table it, then you and I can talk to other managers and come up with 400,000. That's the target.
Any other thoughts on downside or?
May I ask you a question? Are you looking at just expenses or do you want us to look at some revenue adjustments?
Well, I mean, my thought process, both.
Both, okay.
I mean, this is expensive, but
Yeah.
these are areas on the
Yeah.
revenue side that
Based on
there's
last
an
year.
opportunity.
Just don't put any more revenue in the DNA, please.
You don't think we're gonna make the 34% increase?
I think they're gonna get it out of the fund this time.
I hope so. I'm looking for money on the other side. Someone to take the other side of that rate.
And the only other area I didn't address was I asked the police chief, they wanted to add 2 positions in the dispatch and 2 officers. And I said, well, there will be a reduction in the overtime. And I think it could be, You know, what I'm saying based on, I'd rather have two officers, to be honest with you, so that they have a good complement of people that are, 24-hour shifts or whatever. But we can just discuss that. I know that, Tim, you said that you're not gonna get the people.
They're not gonna be on the road for at least a year.
Yeah.
At least a year. They probably won't be in the academy for a year. And then you're looking at 6 months to get the academy, and then another 2 months training on the road. So we're looking at officers sometime in end of 2023 at best. We're gonna want them this year.
Well, if you don't put the positions in the budget, then we have to circle back to you to get approval to do it. The charter prevents anybody from exceeding the head count that's approved in the budget. So one possible alternative would be fund the 2 positions, but at 50% on the idea that they would start in January and reduce that amount from overtime. So net, your budget's the same, but you're actually putting the head count in. If you don't believe the chief's going to be able to hire and put into the academy officers before January, you can put them in the budget at 50%, saying they're start in January.
I see what, I agree with you. Doing it, but looking at the police department. I'd rather have it on done versus. I don't think it makes any difference. I mean, they're not even at their full complement now. And if people retire, you still have to replace them based on the complement now. So.
If you're on Zoom, please mute. Thank you.
I mean, it's a lot cheaper to pay overtime than there's the training.
Okay, I think we can talk about it, but again, I'd like to give them the opportunity to at least look for people. And you can't do that if we don't include it in the budget. I kind of like Kevin's idea with respect to this. We're saying the same thing maybe from a budget standpoint, but at least if you give it the opportunity to have those two to look for them, because you're allowed to, because if you don't put them in there, you're not allowed to. So if you say they start mid-year and then we reduce.
Then you're gonna cut an equal amount out of the overtime budget.
Yeah, and we can get there the same way, but I do believe it should be at that level based on what the chief, is saying. That's my personal opinion.
Believe me, I do too. I have a vested interest in it. Yes. Bottom line is, if they're not gonna be on the road, it's not practical.
Yes, I understand.
But if we're gonna cut the overtime end of it, obviously putting 2 on, then I guess in that respect it would work.
Are you saying that during the year, we can't hire someone new, if the position is not in the original budget?
Without approval from the council and board of finance.
Without our. Okay.
Oh, well, that's not a complicated task anyways.
I
So
mean, that's what we do with the facility superintendent. That's why we-
I thought you were saying.
you couldn't do it all this year.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
That's the way it came across.
Oh, no, no.
Then, yeah, to me, it doesn't make sense to do it all.
That's the point, yeah. That's the
Because I mean, if we have that kind of a problem, the town council's not gonna have a problem doing it literally.
Yeah.
So question, do they just look for new recruits or it's like no opportunity to pull somebody from a different force?
They do actually have a number of experienced officers, many who have retired from other police forces, and have come over. A few from Britain, and some from Hartford. I don't know all of
They
them.
still have to go through the academy.
Yeah.
And they get the road running, right?
Exactly.
So
They just would be in-house training and all sorts of.
still maybe may need funded at some point in time. So you have to have a way if it happens. But I
But
understand.
the way it looks is that whether you do it one way or the other, based on timing, it's gonna be a kind of a wash from a budget perspective possibly, but I'm okay with, us having to approve it later on.
I am too. Just we talked before, like, they do look for new recruits. I mean, and even if they hire them and they're in the academy, there's not gonna be any increase in overtime while they're in training. They're still gonna need to fill those other positions with overtime for that entire year. There's no trade-off there. to me.
While they're in the academy, we are still paying them. So we may not
Right, I know.
benefit of being on the road, but we do have to have the budget dollars.
You're almost paying twice.
You are, because you have the overtime to cover the open position while someone, and even when they come on board, you have to be the training that they have to go through, so you have an FTO working side by side.
It's just, they just get the regular complement of overtime, so overtime. That's one of the problems we're having now. Got 42-man department and 38 guys working, there's a lot of overtime.
Because the other piece, in addition to retirements, is injury. Somebody's on workers' comp.
But George, don't forget, you've already been budgeting 42. So every year we have become short, we spend a lot less than budget, you know what I'm saying? So in a day.
You can't get to the 42.
Right, can't get to 42 anyway, so.
We put 2 more on, we're not gonna get to 44.
And I think that's a broader problem. So I mean, if you were talking, other departments have the same one, doesn't make it good. It's, there's an element of Berlin, but there's an element of police and candidly, the police accountability didn't help with that in terms of recruiting, retention. Benefits, but it did hurt those who are in that profession.
Does us reducing the number of positions tie their hands on the process of, because there is so much lead time, does that tie their hands in terms of not being able to go out to look for these people, or?
No.
It's just when they actually come up.
I mean, they can get the process started if you have a mutual understanding. That when it's coming, putting to the council and the board of finance. And actually, they started interviewing last year for a couple of positions that would have filled.
What is the issue of having them in the budget without funding?
Yeah.
You said, you mentioned cut the salaries half or whatever, but keep the FTEs in the budget.
Well, you would keep 2 FTEs for half the year, which would mean they'd have approval to come in January.
Well, if the town council approves 40 additional 2, we wouldn't even have to fund that, would we, technically? At this time, if they just said the department is approved for 44, that's just the town council decision. We can fund that later if we need to.
So
You
you
can
have,
make that decision anytime they
but you
want.
haven't embedded it in the budget. In other words, you're not budgeting headcount, you're budgeting dollars to cover the headcount. And the charter actually says if there's anything proposed in the budget that the board of finance or council cuts, then you have to come back and ask for it during the year. So if you cut it, the council can't add it in. Council can't add anything. Reject.
But you think there's language in the charter that talks to they have to be funded at full whatever, a certain amount?
No, that's why I'm saying if you did 50%.
Well, I mean, why even 50%? Fund them at $25,000, fund them at $10,000. And then we come back, if you do hire them and fill a hole somehow.
Well, if you're gonna do that, it's not put anything in there, because you're gonna have to take action. Hey,
And it's the argument about you're not having to go back to the council for approval because they're approved. So you skip that.
but if you want
Skip that
additional
step.
funding, if you want additional funding, you have to go to council.
You gotta go in.
It's a very restrictive.
Do we have to vote on this particular item?
You can take a vote if you
No,
want.
it's okay.
If you want to take a
We're
vote.
kind of in agreement that we leave the 2 positions off right now and postpone it until we get one.
Okay.
Isn't there a third position? Or is it?
Dispatcher.
We know what that amounts to because it was hard for me to discern where that money was.
Each patrol officer fully salary benefits is $121,000 each.
And that was what was in the budget.
That was
121 including that.
including benefits, 121 more.
Making this easy for you. Wanted 400,000, which is found 240.
400 was.
Okay, so now you gotta find more.
400 was without the sleep. So.
Oh, okay, good. Very good.
I mean, I don't, they are writing another dispatcher building.
Well, when the chief spoke about it, one of the big advantages that we articulated is that we currently have a police officer. I think it's a lieutenant, it might be a sergeant, who oversees. This would allow you to restructure and create a management structure for the dispatchers, free up police officer.
Yeah.
So you get kind of dual benefit.
Yeah.
While we're
How much
talking-
is that
90,000.
with benefits?
While we're talking about positions, Roche, this assistant planner that you had in here for full-time, is there any possibility that we could go with like hiring a retired guy, hire a part-time to assist with the planning activities that you were talking about at the previous meeting?
So we tried, even now, to make calls for retired people, they don't want to come back.
I thought this was such a nice place to work.
It's nothing to do with the place. There are two professions that everybody's gonna have trouble. One is the assessors. No one in the pipeline fill those positions. And the second one is town planners. You could argue that some of those, if those with qualifications to do that type of work can go do better things in the private sector. It's a thankless job. And this is not just sport. You look at town planners that are out there, they're trying to fill the positions, can't get anyone. We tried years ago. It's a difficult field. So, and the reason I'm asking, I think I explained why we're trying to do it here, that is probably one bottleneck that we have with everything that's going on. And we are, we need to make this town a little bit more proactive in terms of zoning and planning regulations, and especially our regulations never get updated for all the legislative changes, whether it's affordable housing or cannabis regulation or land use. We wait until somebody gets in there, and then it takes months for us to get to that place. I like to be in a position where you go, when these things come up, you update. And we are attracting people to come in here and do business and develop and do other things. So just sort of get ahead of that. And I mentioned this to you before, that, whenever we see opportunities, and we have done it before, and I mentally have a couple of positions that possible retirement, we would have some efficiency within the next year or two. And, him and I, and the managers too, we are not to say every time somebody needs, you're going to fill the position. So I would prefer not to do it, partly because you can't. The person who just retired in Meriden, Cheshire, I'm sorry, we called, said, no, thank you. I'm done. Not even 10 hours.
I know the year and a half I was on the planning and zoning, which was recently, I can tell you Maureen is absolutely flat out. I don't know how she even does what she's doing. And I know other things are falling by the wayside. I mean, if you go out and look at on the website and look at what the P&Z zoning regulations are, you'll get the 2018 version. We made several different modifications in that year and a half I was there. I have no idea where they are on the website. So people are out there blind in terms of what the rules are, or whatever.
Even when Merrick was here and there were two in the office plus Fran working, they were flat out. And unfortunately, the thing that ultimately falls by the wayside is zoning enforcement, which for those breaking, those violating, they might be okay with that. If you're a neighbor of someone, if you have a blighted property, if you have other issues, that there's.
Yeah, I know they did add a zoning enforcement officer while I was on. That wasn't there for the longest period of time. More was
And we're trying to backfill that one actively this week, try to backfill. That's a very tough spot because you're between enforcement, rules, and developers who are trying to grow. And it's a tough position.
On the health insurance, I think the board of Ed was using 10%. Is that the number we're using too? Or?
We're using 9.3, so 10% medical, 0 dental.
So we're still around the 9% or so.
Yeah, right now, the latest we heard was 13.5. We're still trying to beat that down. It's driven primarily, the variance is driven primarily by stop loss. We've had some chronic large claims to the tune of several $100,000, hundreds of thousands of dollars individually. And so our stop loss insurance premium increased that Anthem proposed out of the 75%. They've increased the whole book substantially. We took a big percent. We are trying to negotiate with them, as well as our broker is looking in the marketplace to evaluate alternative standards for stop loss.
So expanding, so who uses the table to discuss insurance? Is it the union, is it the town? Who is it?
We've hired the broker that was hired a couple of years ago. He works with a number of different communities, so he's able to get market perspective. He comes to us. We have a consortium on the town side, so all the unions kind of come together and sign on. The ultimate decision as we go through the process would be Baroche, myself, as well as the business manager on the Board of Ed and the human resources director. Those are his contacts. So the union is involved, but when it comes to many of those decisions, that's ultimately a town decision.
So if I'm hearing this right, it's the town union. I would presume the teacher would be
Board of Ed unions are part of this. It's a collective plan, both town and Board of Ed.
So you have to worry about what's contractual contracts in insurance.
I mean, we have the option if we wanted to move vendors, but we do have to work through on the Board of Ed side, a little different than the town side. But we do have some discretion in those areas.
But I think what you're getting for it, we're not buying premiums for life insurance. We pay our own claims. They're using the broker to get the stop loss and to estimate what it is that we should be putting out in for our self premiums.
And
Is it 10% support? Or are they using 9.3 also?
they indicated they're using 10.
They are using.
We will ultimately have to settle on. Ultimately, what's going to happen is Anthem's going to come back with specific rates. For example, last year, we have two plans on the town side. We have a high deductible plan, and then we have a traditional PPO plan with copay and the traditional insurance. The high deductible plan saw between 3 and 5% increase last year. The PPO plan saw 9, almost 10%. So the blend was about 4 to 5%. But the reality is those who wanted the premium plan not only were previously paying higher amount, they actually saw a more substantial increase, and their cost share percentage was higher. So we've tried to use plan design to really incent people towards the high deductible plan. We've increased the high deductible beginning this year. The board has done the same with their folks. So we are trying to avail ourselves of all of those, whether they're cost shifting, cost sharing, needs to control your own medical. And where those folks choose the premium plan, we're charging them quite a premium on it. And I will say one thing, Jerry, we usually talk each year. I did compare to the state plan. The state has a plan that municipalities are able to buy into. Our premiums continue to be below that plan. That plan also has some challenges. I was reading a report that an analyst did late last year questioning the longevity of that plan, because it is really, the premiums are not remotely close to adequate, which means Connecticut taxpayers are subsidizing that plan. It's essentially a pool within the state's Anthem plan that municipalities are able to purchase. It needs to be priced better, and since we're already priced lower, at this point, it still doesn't make sense for the town to jump into a full insured plan where the premiums would go higher.
I preface this by saying something that someone said last night. Not that we're going to do this at all, but if there were a change in that 9.3% or 10%, what is 1% equivalent to? Okay. If you will, thank you. Not the-
You all know this, the tricky part with self-insured, we want to try and get the most accurate protection. So Anthem, the underwriters are doing our own USI consulting underwriters. This year, they are, the zone is fairly close to 10%. And previously, they were at 6 and 14 or something. Then there's some play. They're very close to 10. And just want to be careful.
Yeah, we don't want to run our reserves down.
Then you
We
come
do have
back and then you got to
2.5
pay for
million.
it. Then they'll be knocking on the door again. With the police officers. Increase the budget. So,
Any more questions on the downside? We still want to get back to the capital. So we can talk about anything else on the downside?
Is that fuel estimate still good, or should we be looking at, yeah.
We
I
did see a
figured
little
so.
dip today. It did come down today. Last I saw peak of 125, it was like 111.
The thing is, we're gonna look at some number and think we're okay. Who knows
We're
what
gonna
it's
be
gonna be
addressing that all year.
when it gets to $200 a barrel.
Unless we drop below 100 and lock it in, I think we're going to be uneasy for a while. At this point, it doesn't make sense to lock it in. It's so high that we're better off paying market in short term. There's just so many issues at play.
That's what we asked for. Diesel contract is up July 1st. Diesel is more expensive than gasoline currently.
Any more questions on the downside? Okay. So the other day I mentioned, with the surplus that we have in FY22, that we would take the capital off the budget list for FY23 and use that surplus to accommodate the capital. We didn't have a further discussion. So this is up for discussion.
Did we ever fund everything that we took out of last year's capital?
I think pretty much. I have to look at the list specifically, but we hit a lot. Now, part of the challenge we have with all of that is being able to purchase vehicles. So we funded it. It's a matter of just the world. But we are still trying to do that and be in a position when they continue and they actually make cars that we can purchase, to be in a position to buy them quickly and put them on the road. There's police, facilities, grounds, highway. We've got a backlog of all of those.
Problems purchasing probably a lot of even equipment.
Oh, yeah.
I noticed in the fire department, somebody like your protective equipment, you're not, like you have a bunch of money in there, you're not spending that yet. Is it because of not ordering or?
We will be going out for fitting very shortly.
Okay.
But again, that's still, they have no delivery dates or anything.
Yes, it's a challenge.
We had that problem last year. What we did, it's unusual to carry operating over, but because the order was in and it was just COVID delayed, we carried it over. So they did buy protective clothing.
Last set of gear just came in.
Yeah.
From last year.
So they have bought gear this year. But we're just behind. We're almost a year behind in COVID. Hopefully we're going to catch up.
Any comment on the capital aspect?
So that's actually is.
that's the 1,132,000.
Quick question, you did include 30,000 in the Veterans Park for irrigation system.
Yes,
Is that not capital or is it, why is that considered expense?
it's an operating element. It's the new monument that they're putting in there. It's worked around there. You're all obviously.
Yeah, I know that, but I didn't know why it was expense as opposed to a capital.
It's kind of the nature of what they're going to be doing with it. We went back and forth as to whether to put that in the grounds budget or the veterans budget. That would be a one-time element, but the Gold Star monument, it's for that area. And obviously there's a peace problem there. And there's some other issues. So it's to address that. It's we have a statewide monument and that's why that's.
Okay, that's the town side. Now we can talk a little about the Board of Education. The people's comments and opinions regarding the Board of Education. Jerry, you want to talk about it or no?
I like I said before, I've heard a lot of people talking about some real low numbers. I'd like to see what those things are. I'll take a pass.
Well, I took a shot at it, you know, so I'm not gonna say I didn't take a shot at it. But you look at their total increase of 4.67%. 1% of it is the items above the contractual requirements. So, and then what I asked the superintendent, and he maybe possibly use some of the COVID, ESSER monies to accommodate some of the learning loss with the kids and cover some of their, resources.
Sorry.
Okay.
Did Donna say we need some money?
Well, I think there's going to be with learning loss and mental aspect of it. I think there's going to be plenty of money coming for it. I think, in the next year, in the next 2 years. They're not going to recover from this for 2-3 years. I agree with what I'm saying. So she indicates that they're working hard to, come up with budgets for accommodate that.
So that I'm referring how much.
I mean, so yeah, so I'm just offering a solution so we can minimize the tax increase. And the other part of it is I was saying take a 0.5% challenge. So for example, right, if you take the 1% off above the contraction requirements, use maybe 500,000 of the COVID ESSER funds, okay, and use a 0.5%, target reduction in areas. I'm saying it's a 2.5% increase over last year from the Board of Education as opposed to, no, 2%, sorry, 2% increase.
So you would say 4.67 would go down to 2?
I'm sorry, that's
0.67.
That's stuff.
Like me, you have too many papers.
yeah,
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah. No, I wrote it down somewhere.
Yeah, the one you sent me.
That's why we put a survey in this room.
What's the bottom line that you got to us at?
Yeah, 2.53.
I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. So if I did the 500,000 on the
Yeah.
COVID, that would generate 2%, around 2%. So if you took eliminate the 1% over and above, okay, you give them a 0.5% challenge on the baseline budget, so. And then you tell them to use $500,000 of COVID-related funds to deal with learning loss and so forth.
Funds that they don't have.
Huh?
Funds that they don't have.
Yeah, right.
They get, but you talked in that last meeting weeks ago about pulling next year's into this year. Yeah. That I can't support.
Well,
That's like the old days when we say we'll pay the pension next year. We'll double it up
They're
next year.
getting those funds.
They're getting each year funds.
But they also didn't spend FY '22. level also. There's still a bunch of money left in the current year also.
And there's still 6 months left, 3 months
Yeah,
left. in the
they're
year.
not spending. Well, and then they have F 23.
All I'm saying is I don't want to drag 24 money to 23.
Understand. So that would generate a 2% increase over last year. Okay, and then the other thing is if you reduce that ESSER funds to maybe 300 instead of 500, it would be more like a 2.5% increase. So those are,
Which is about, I'm at 2.6 for that.
so that's, you know, I'm trying
We're
to,
not-
I said anywhere between 2 and 2.5%, I said.
I was given round numbers at
All right,
1,250,000.
we're all at the same.
I think that was 25. between
2.7, 2.6, 2.4, and then we're all in the same.
So we're in the range. We're in the range.
Dear?
Commentary on that? Do a commentary on that? No, okay. I mean, I just, some, let's see, I had 2.5, 2.6. So I mean, I think we're all thinking about the same thing. That, yeah, it's not like we're millions on for whatever.
You didn't say zero.
No.
So you're saying 4.67 would be in the neighborhood of 2 to 2.6, somewhere in.
Yeah,
Okay.
2.5. Versus our range of 2.7.
Maybe more 2.5. There's two of them.
I go.
Yeah, and I'm 2.6, so and he's 2.7.
Yeah. Well, you could take a nice round number, 1,250,000, you know?
That's also on.
I do want, one thing with Julia.
That's not, I'm sorry, that's not the cut, that's the increase.
Right.
Yeah.
Just want to be clear.
Yes.
But I did tell the superintendent chair that I would communicate to see, can we work together so that when we go to referendum or when we go to presentation, that we're on the same page. I don't want to say we're falling off a cliff because, so I do want the opportunity to talk to them, so can work with this. We've been communicating so far, we're always gonna have differences of opinion and stuff. So I was a little disappointed that the Board of Education did not take a stance on reducing the 4.67 a year ago, to be honest. We were talking ahead of time and trying to say, come on, take a leap, at least a shot at trying to reduce it. And they prove the whole amount. It is what it is. They're doing their job.
So do you want to take any votes tonight, or do you want, we'll go back to 400, do you want us to put together an updated dashboard for the next meeting?
Since you started with some increase, where's your head at with that? Tax increase.
Tax increase.
Is it 0.4, 0.8, 0.2?
I mean, I to be honest with you, I'm looking at, it's hard. I'm saying it's gotta be somewhere between 0.5 and 1. Somewhere, I'd like to stay, you know what I mean? But the closer to what we are to 0.5 is better, but.
I would go 0.5. There's no way I'm going on a million freaking years.
All right, Jared, don't yell at me. So,
He seems the right way.
no, I just, before Kevin starts going down a different path.
Go down it.
No, it's not asking the
question.
So we're looking for $4.8 million. Capital's $1.2 million, take $1.2 million Board of Ed, and that leaves you 2.4 to juggle between fund balance and mill increase. 0.8's worth 1.9, half's worth 1.2. So that's big picture. And you guys know I'm not a very detailed guy. That's where my head's at.
I'm not either.
So.
That's where my-
So tell me what the numbers are.
I just did.
I mean, you tell me percentages.
So,
Tell me
okay.
numbers.
Okay, we need 4.8 million, right?
To get down to what?
Well,
Yeah, that-
1.98 is 4.8 million.
Oh, you got.
That's
the
our
whole
start.
thing.
The whole increase. So
Okay.
$1.2 million Board of Ed, $1.2 million capital, and that leaves you 2.4. that you toggle between fund balance and taxes. If you give a 0.8 mil increase, that's fine.
Yeah.
That leaves $500,000 out of fund balance. So that's your,
But aren't you taking?
So you're,
400,000?
yeah, 400,000.
that's why I didn't want you to talk. I'm like here. So if you want to keep 400 of capital in and take 400 out of the town, go right ahead.
Okay. I get it.
I'm trying, and I'm also here trying to spread the pain between Board of Ed, town, and taxpayer.
So you're.
And steal a little out of fund balance. Again, if you want to use 0.6, it's 1.6 instead of 1.9.
I think the town can come up with 400 without the fees.
I think they should. That's not a lot. That's
4 to
not a lot.
500.
No, and I'll be honest, to be fair, we had a conversation a long time ago, I don't even remember, where you said to me, looking for a little more balance to Board of Ed, so I'm trying to spread here. That's all I was doing.
We're operating from the idea that we're gonna find the 400. It was outside of the police and outside of capital.
Okay.
So we will, that's our task for next
If we find a
Wednesday.
little more, that'll be good.
Yeah, but I mean, that's our task.
I really would like to see that one. So I mean, I think we can do it. I think there's ways to do it.
That, well, you just got 400 and 700 in my little scenario.
Yeah.
So that means another couple hundred of fund balance it does. And then the pay is sort of equally spread, so.
I'm still in favor of using some of the COVID money that we got through the town to do some of the capital. Because basically, that's long term. Some of the stuff like the fire trucks and stuff, that's long term. We're not talking about borrowing for police cars and stuff like that. We're talking about
Which I would never
fire trucks that are, what are we looking at, 20-year lifespan if they don't go out of business?
Correct.
So what is the harm in taking some of that? We got 5.3 million. We have no freaking idea what these air conditioners are gonna cost. Nobody seems to be able to nail it down. And if we take out, say 500,000 from that to do one of the fire trucks, that's gonna help us a little bit on that, on the capital end. And we're still gonna have almost 5 million left for something we don't even know what it's gonna cost.
I mean, we operating under 4 or 5 million per school.
So get one going. I still got
Okay, so yes, everything's going up. I get it.
You know what I'm saying? We got 4.8 million left. So start doing an air conditioner. Stop talking about it and start doing it.
So was the plan to borrow for that fourth fire truck or pay for it?
Well, that was
We
why,
had talked about paying for it.
that was why
So-
it's sitting both on the bond plan and
Yeah,
on.
I mean,
we don't know.
I thought at one point we talked about paying for it.
If your fund balance is sitting there, it makes more sense like we did with the 2.2 million. I would say the advantage of doing the HVAC is while the individual schools, I don't know exactly what they will be, somewhere in the 5 million range, maybe 6, maybe 4, 4.5. But between the 3 schools, I'm highly confident we're going to spend all of that. The fire trucks, we've got 2 that are on order. We're not going to get them for another 14 to 16 months.
The summer of 2023.
So if we were to order now, you could start the air conditioning units. The plan would be get out there, get contracts, get them ready. Next summer, we're doing Willard, we're doing the Willard parking lot, that parking lot, the loading dock, all of that needs to be done. So we do all of that next summer. This gives the funding in place to get that going. That doesn't prevent us from doing the next fire truck with fund balance there as well.
Then let's look at some of the other capital items beside the fire truck that we can maybe use right away out of that COVID money. I mean, we're putting, even at that, we're putting over $4 million back into the Board of Ed. I mean, some of that money should be directed towards the town. We took money from it last year to balance out, to give the Board of Ed a little extra. And now we're going to throw another $5.3 million at the Board of Ed. I mean, where does it stop? Does the town get any of this?
Well, I will say HVAC has been, I've been here 5.5 years and it has been on the agenda and under the needs to be done the entire time I've been here, it's probably before that.
Oh,
So
I'm sure it
I
has.
hear what you're saying, but with the 5 schools,
and these are town-owned buildings, so
But how-
I wouldn't
how
point
is-
that at the Board of
I was thinking 300 to 400,000 out of that money, changing what we're gonna do with the air conditioning.
It's not how to pay for
It's
it.
not.
We don't even have a cost yet.
I agree.
Well, they said they're about 95% done with the bid specs. I mean, that thing is ready to go. In my mind, I wouldn't support anything with that money that isn't an item that was going to be bonded. Because the thought process we had in the beginning was we take something off the table that we were going to be bonding, and now we're not only getting the dollar for dollar impact of that, but we're not paying the interest. So anything that, we're going to use it for, I'd be looking for it still to be something that otherwise would be fine. And you're right. I mean, we're going to be doing a lot of different projects. I wouldn't take 100,000 and do police cruisers. I wouldn't take
No.
100,000 and do any
Gotta be
other
something that's
capital
gonna
item that
be there for a while.
we would otherwise spend.
Yeah. agree on that.
Okay, but
Yeah, I think we're getting close to where we want to be for maybe the half mil. In general, the Board of Ed, the Board of Finance, and the Town Council agreed to use that money, for the HVAC system for water, as a team. So really not steer away from that, at this stage. I mean, my personal opinion.
If we can get to the half mil another way, I'll be more than willing to listen.
But not to complicate things. I just don't want to forget, we talked about the renovations, PD. If we're gonna do that next year, and if you want to borrow, you gotta think about how the debt service gonna impact the budget. If you're gonna do it fiscal
Let me
23.
ask a question. We got 5.2 million, and that doesn't include any relocation costs,
Board
for
of
Board of Ed, and any other configuration changes they have to do. This thing, I know last time we talked about it doing an increment. This thing's got to go to a vote, I believe. So if it's going to be over $5 million, it's got to go for referendum.
And the town
Public
attorney
vote.
confirmed today, regardless of
So,
how
I
you
mean,
stage the fund.
Yeah, you gotta.
You can't go on that. The first phase is $3.2 million. You can't get to that, I think, from a procedural standpoint.
We may be coming back to you in the near term to ask for 300,000 in fund balance for the specific work, so the engineer doing the deeply detailed work, so that we can also do professional cost estimate, so that we can, and at the same time, we have to figure out, the Board of Ed is going to be step one, not because it's the Board of Ed, but because that space has to be clear, or the locker rooms can't go in. So we have to figure that out, so that when we go out to bond, we have a good number and we have a good plan to actually share with the voters.
What happens when we do these estimates and it comes in at $7 million? We're still happy with that?
Well, it's gonna be higher than 5.2. The price is only guaranteed for 6 months. So the construction is gonna take place 6 months. After 6 months, it's gonna be automatically at least 6% or more.
What's the timing of going through this whole process?
Well, I think we want to come back to you sooner so that we can get quality estimates. The goal would be to try to do the ordinance in advance of the November vote. If not, then we'll have to wait, let's say realistically, until April with the budget vote, or until the following November. So if you vote in November and it passes, realistically, even if we're ready to go, and we say, okay, let's hit the street, 30 days, 45 days, we can get the money. We're not gonna be able to line up contractors and materials. You're talking summer 23.
I'm not a construction person, but do you know when these people do these estimates, whether they're estimating at today's dollars or what it might cost when we're going to build it?
Typically, they will give you today's dollars and then add on lines for inflation. This is, we assume it's going to be done in this period. Here's what you should add for every successive year, or 6 months, whatever it is.
And then you add contingency on top of that.
It depends if they embed contingency in it.
Is that a question? Do they do an estimate or a presentation? Because 50% contingency.
There's
Yeah,
contingency,
it's already
so
there.
it's that in there.
Yeah.
That's in there.
It's in there.
And the 5.2 does include the 300,000 for the deep estimates that we will be coming back to now. So that was embedded. The amount was 4.9. I'm always cautious, I will tell you, just like when somebody hands a budget transfer that's $9,999 or something. I'm always cautious when it says 5 million, it goes to referendum. Oh, it's gonna cost 4.9. It always kind of raises a flag of, did you back into that number? Or is that really the number? It's going over 5 when we talk about work that we also we'd have to find a new home for the food pantry.
So, but 5.2 includes all 3 phases, right? What if we remove one of the phases? Like the carports, for example.
If you're removing it from the project itself,
Yep.
then you could make the argument that the project costs this much, and then you would go and say to the police, that final phase, which was the carports, and there was one other.
It was,
piece,
it was something else. It was the carports, yeah. The parking lot.
would be, to be done later. And we piecemealed them. We did the jail cells, we did the interviews. It's not like we're not used to having a piecemeal project.
So here's my problem. All right, I've gone to the police department and visited, and to the board. Needs to be done. It's not, it's barely HVAC needs to be done. So for them, for us to keep pushing and pushing. If we can get it done with phase 1 and phase 2. For now. That's.
Yeah, I just want to give you a little history, because we've been doing police department upgrades and stuff since I've been on the planet. Started with communication center, we did some interview rooms, we did the jail cells, you know, and everybody came, and I haven't done the lockers yet. You know, we've talked about the lockers, you know, and when they talk about the lockers, that basically was the last piece that they acquired.
Exactly.
And now all of a sudden we've got 5.5 million, which took me by more than a little surprise. So, I mean,
I was a little surprised.
I agree with you. I want them to have what they need to do, but I'm putting my skeptical hat on, you know, that this is a 20-year fix. You know, I heard that at the meeting, and I'd love to believe it, but.
And dumping $5.5 million into a almost 50-year-old building.
Is it worth, if he's available, asking Brian Hughes to come to the next Board of Finance meeting to talk about this?
He's in town, right?
Yeah, no, because he needs this right in town.
Yeah, yeah.
Or, or.
Can we get to the budget first?
Yeah,
Yeah, kind of.
I guess.
I think the police station should probably discuss a little more of that after we're done with this. I personally think we could just do phase 1 and leave it at that for quite a while. I would question even doing phase 2. I would even call it, I would call phase 1 the project.
What's
And
phase
that
2?
would be the project.
Yeah.
That goes into more of the upfront stuff. But phase 1 is all the locker room areas. It's the
Space.
it's the bookings area that's actually has safety hazard. It's the carports. This actually a safety hazard too, but if that phase 1 is $0.8 million, that's going to update that whole department down there and take care of 90% of the problems. So we should be looking at that as priority number 1, and then all the rest can be addressed later, because if you watch the presentation Humes did, it's broken out so that they're actually, you can do it in those phases and pretty much just stop at any point. So that's the big one. It brings the lockers up to speed. It puts female lockers in there that we need. These are the big double door lockers that, I mean, police have so much shit now. It's unbelievable. So
Stuff.
stuff, excuse me, stuff.
Here.
And it provides the opportunity to hire more female officers if we wanted. We literally run out of locker space.
That's a
sizable
lockers.
lockers. We literally don't have lockers.
If we were to, like, we're talking about hiring police officers, and just because we can't hire a female officer because we don't have facilities, honestly, to me as a citizen, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
I'd be glad to talk to the mayor and say, here's, if you want to do this immediately, do that phase 1 and let's move on. Move
That's a
forward.
good solution.
So, because it has to be done. They can't even bring any female officers, in, right? Because they don't have lockers.
And the booking rooms, the booking areas and nightmares, it's a safety hazard. It's 50-year-old technology.
See if we can,
I would imagine you'd be fine with doing that. What do we have in fund balance for people? Not the chopped up one, real.
The pretend encumbrance slide.
The one you were talking about.
That's in the max.
Sorry, Kevin, I do love you.
It's about 12 if we take the million out.
Okay. So we could almost pretty much self-fund that part of the project if we had to. Yeah.
I'm not sure that necessarily would be the wisest.
It may not be the wisest, but if we had to.
All right, so I have 1.2 million, says that right? I have Board of Ed, capital, 500,000, 400 from the town, 800 from fund balance. And that's,
And when they find 400, which one of those is changing?
no, that's in, that's
You
in.
took the, yeah, you took the 400, right?
Did you include the police?
That's 240.
640.
Plus 4.
I didn't, I'm not even talking about police.
We can,
That's not $250,000.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
So we can get to the.
it's achievable.
that's what I'm saying. Wow, imagine if we had a 6-0 vote.
Okay. Well, part of it is work together, communicate together, and we're all trying to do the right thing, you know what I mean? It's just, today's environment, it's,
And you know.
nobody
it's
likes
gotta
what
be
they're paying
utilities.
for their heating costs, for their gas prices, for their food prices.
Calculate this.
Say something before about the fire trucks.
So we made the final inspection on the engine tanker, which should be here in a few weeks. To our surprise, the.
This is a good thing.
You gotta remember, they're used to me.
Our surprise is there is a 3,000 unit backlog on built fire trucks. They took in, when we went for that, before the increase, the significant increase, they took in 700 orders. That's what put us out till spring of 2023. They are now booking apparatus for year 2025. And one of their biggest problems is they cannot get the motors. So if you were to give me the money today or give me the authorization today, you wouldn't see that truck or have to pay for that truck.
For the forest truck.
Fully for till 2025.
That remind me, that's East Berlin, right?
Just get better and
What is the
better.
condition
So
of
why
trucks
wouldn't
in
we
East
do
Berlin?
that and lock the price in?
What is the condition of the trucks right now in East Berlin?
Well, the problem with
Like
trucks in East
you're-
Berlin, there's two pieces of equipment over there, they're both American brands. The rescue truck just went back into service from an extended period out of service. But it is up and operational. The engine is up and operational, again into 2002. I will not put a unsafe vehicle on the road.
Oh, I know that.
They are currently there. With the sale of the apparatus that we just sold, we were supposed to sell 2 apparatus. We're going to be paying 1 until the next 2 come in, which would be 2023 in the summer. So we will basically have a spare unit to cover any one of those 3 American Francis or 4 American Francis that are left.
Okay.
So the apparatus, it's serviceable. It's on the road right now. It is 20 years old. You have to understand that it's 20 years old. But we are working to make sure that in the event that we did go down a piece of apparatus, we have something to fall back on. And if you were to authorize the purchase of that apparatus in the budget, you would not see that apparatus in 2025.
But could you lock the price in?
We could lock the price.
Sure.
Now, with that being said, we have not begun to develop specifications because there's no sense in having 6 months of meetings if there's no data. So
So you don't just say, I want
we
two of
would-
these, or?
We would not be ready to order the wall. We would not be ready to order.
But if there's a the authorization, you can start working on making specs and everything.
So
Yeah, that's why we put the budget spring out first.
I don't know if you were looking at the funds set aside for that or not.
Yeah, they're lying around down the hall.
There's money in
Goes back to his office.
Yeah, they'll have to see if you give it to them.
Kevin, have you,
You probably have you done your review of inactive capital projects to see if there's anything floating around that might need to be, or might be available?
I have done some that I was actually going to bring forward once we were done with this, to try to move in to fund a good chunk of the next highway truck. We've got some of the over from the wood chipper and some of those projects, individually smaller amounts that collectively could be used for the next.
So you're gonna leave it in the capital?
That was my intent, was to put it in there, so the next time we have to purchase a highway truck, that there would at least be some seed money in there, it kind of money we put into highway for those items. I will tell you, the excavator has worked remarkably well. It has, I don't know if you were the one who was telling me that it has a winch on the front that they're actually able to use to lift up, literally lift trees up. And they've helped people here in town with that. It's a huge use, as well as the, not the paving box, but the hot box, which
The
allows
asphalt.
put the asphalt, so you're not using cold patches this time of the year, but actually putting stuff down and keeping it. So they're actually, the town staff is able to do a lot of things that we would otherwise have to push out in a contract, which, given today's environment, not only is expensive, but it's often hard to find people. Those are huge ads. We'd like to kind of keep it there so we can keep that momentum.
So I don't want to jump the chair, but so whenever our next meeting is, I guess it's Wednesday, can we do where he puts up on the computer and we just start?
My thought was to take everything you guys have here,
Yeah, and then.
put everything talked about here in it, so you can see the picture and then decide what it is you want to go with.
We could potentially vote on it next week.
Well, that's the idea, that you would vote, send it, and it would be to send to the annual budget hearing, so you'd still have opportunities to come back.
And all 300 people will show up to vote for him.
And we can talk next week, but I don't know, depending on the way this is going, I don't know if you would be interested in doing what we did last year, which was to adjourn and then call another meeting right after it that night and just vote to send it to the council, so we don't have to reconvene the next night. The only other question I have for you guys, you don't have to decide tonight. We presented the budget with the idea that there would be no motor vehicle cap. So you don't have to set the mill rate until after the budget's adopted, so it's not going to decide now. We are looking at it from both angles. If it's 29, we know what the state has said our grant would be, so we can show you what the impact would be. Just so you know, if you get to, for example, a $500,000 increase, what you're going to end up with is a substantial drop in the mill rate from 33.93 to 29. If that's where it's settled on motor vehicle, it would be higher than that, just because it's going to have to offset with real estate and personal property. Not ridiculous.
The state's gonna pay us back, don't worry.
We know what the state's
Don't
going to
worry.
give us. It's actually decent. What the OPM run was actually a decent grant. It was $1.24 million. I mean, it wasn't an insignificant amount of money.
At the end of the day, at the end of the day, the sum of the totals is we're paying, right?
Of course.
Yes.
So it doesn't make, I mean, from the standpoint that the town will make it benefit, but,
And
A
you were
lot of,
right.
a lot of it, I was just looking at that now, but a lot of that will be based on what their method is. If they take the method of lease reimbursement back to the town, which would be to base everything on 2021. We just looked at the difference between our old mill rate and the 29, that's over $1 million. It's a lot of money. Now, if they do it based on the new assessment,
The run wasn't.
it's like $1.1 million maybe in the hole if they do that.
This is money from here to go buy boats in the city. That's all this is. It's a joke.
You were in Aspen.
No, I was just gonna ask, I wanted to do some of those kind of calculations. I just wondered if you had the 2022 motor vehicle, what the
I did the differential.
Yes,
It's over.
you've got the chart here that went down to 2021, breaking it down to real estate, personal motor vehicle. I'm just curious as to what the 20.
When I did the numbers off of that and compared, as if you did 29 versus just leave it where it was, it's over $500,000. Yeah. So the state's helping, it's just not helping all the way. Just coming down.
I mean, again, we talked about it the other day. If they do that, it's less impact on people's bills. If we get the grant back, great. If they don't do that, this $500,000 is 2.5 mils effective, just so we all understand. People are gonna be screaming no matter what we do. You can make
But
it
there's
zero.
nothing we can do about
Still
that.
gonna be screaming.
There's nothing we
I
can
know
do
there's
about
nothing to do about it. I think somewhere along the line on how we do it, gotta try to give people a heads up that this is coming, because I don't think most people are paying much attention to it. Whether it's something in the paper or.
And it's not you.
No, I know, it's
I've
not
seen
you.
articles about Southington, but it's every, it's cars. Everybody pulls it.
It's insane.
Anything else?
I'm just trying to
Broke out the calculator.
just trying to look at Mark's number here. Because you were saying you broke your cuts down $1.2 million from the Board of Ed. Before I was saying give them $1.2 million increase. So you're a few $100,000 off from your.
Well, we'll go with the lower one. That's easy.
$1.2 million. So you're saying you want to give them about a.
I went off that slide where they kept going back to, here's our average for the last X number of years, so give them 2.5, 2.6, whatever the number exactly is. And
The
that's
interesting
that's
thing
worth
is-
7 figures.
Well, then the cut is $1 million.
$1 million, okay.
Billington was 0 last year, increase before that. And their town manager just posted his budget, they requested 4.53, and the manager gave them 1.69. So we're way above that. Again.
What town is this? I'm sorry.
But that's where the board of that.
Julie.
But teacher there.
Oh, yeah,
They
she
went through a
teaches.
period where they didn't do any kind of real increases for a few years. Then all of a sudden they had to do like a 5 mil, whatever it was. And people got very upset because it was this to this. Over like a year.
My problem with all
Yeah.
those comparisons in the towns around us, criminal record, they have a much bigger business tax base than we do. They got strips of businesses that we will never have here. We don't have the roadway they have.
Yeah.
I have a rough time. with this.
I don't like the comparisons either because they keep switching them out year to year. The past 2 years was student spending. Now ours is above all the towns on the chart. So now we're going to increase rates. We're going to average different numbers.
I mean,
not just-
That's why you gotta start with the
Don't look at it
percentages. The absolute dollars is really the truth.
Yeah.
So the
No.
per
people
expenditure,
spending
they're
more.
number 2
We're
compared to
right
that group of towns.
We're better than every
Here's
town
how
on
I
the
see
class.
it. Here's the comparisons. I like comparisons because if I have a shop, like a budget to go to the store, I could care less what your budget is to go to the store or his budget. It's what's in my budget that matters. So people start bringing this back to this and that. Not to offend anyone.
Yeah,
It's white.
Glastonbury, Farmington.
Yeah.
They don't have much bigger business bases
Yeah,
than
like
we will
noise.
ever have, ever.
It's white
And you have to look for those towns to find the ones that fit your agenda. That just doesn't make sense. And all the towns I looked at, I looked at Southington's budgets, Rocky Hills Board of Education budget, all these others. Nobody does those comparisons like that.
You can go.
They just do a straight budget like the town budget is. That's all they do.
Well, I mean, they do have the DRGs, so.
Yeah.
After they put that chart out there, I go, well, let me see what it would look like on the DRG to do that same calculation. I don't know why they don't use that, or they did after I questioned them on the first one they did. They went and redid it for the DRG, because they do come in smack right in the middle of the DRG on per pupil expenditures. I think the thing that gets me a little bit, if like what I don't understand, I don't know a single other business in the entire United States that brags about that they're the highest cost provider. So when they say give them $20,000 per student and they think that's good. That's not good. You know, they should be able to do the best job for the lowest cost price you can do it. I mean, I never see them talking about, I don't even know how you can compare town to town in terms of their ratings. What are you getting for your dollar? Because they're all over the place, but that's the real metric, you know, what's your level of education? How good are the kids doing for the dollar you're spending? for them?
And you could pull.
I know there's so many of them. I know. It's hard to get, it's hard to wrap your head around.
In us years, you can't measure. You can't, kids are, you have kids in school who even know how to learn. They lack the skills to learn. So how do you measure that? You know? You can't throw money at it. Just may affect the person's ability to study or learn. We don't know.
Jerry, you done with your calculator yet?
Yeah. I was buying some time. I was buying some time. Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second, okay, all in favor?
All right.
Great. Thank you.